Ladies and gentlemen, Scott McKay coming to you live from Dallas, Texas, making my late entry here in tonight's show. Good to see all of you. Good to have all of you here. Welcome to tonight's show, The Tipping Point, the Revolution Radio startup that brought the wave of heat to the scumbag class in this country and around the world back in 2020 when they decided that they had balls big enough to steal an election and then tell you that it was a legitimate victory by a lobotomized weekend at Bernie's. And we endured that for a couple of years. Most of you were very excited about that at that time and flipping out and knew that the country was over and lost. From here, we saw it differently. We saw it as a military operation, and we came out into the open to help explain to all of you exactly what is going on, what's going on, and it has led up to where we are today. Who would have ever imagined that back in 2015, June 15th, I believe it was June 15th, Trump comes down the escalator and announces that he's going to run for the presidency. It's over 10 years ago, folks, 10 years ago plus. And here we are, 10 years later. I knew I saw the proverbial Moses part the sea with that speech. As many of you know, heard me say it 1,000 times. That was the direct indicator we finally were going to begin to take our country back. And yeah, I know we're still at it 10 years later. If anybody else would have said 10 years, F that, I want this to happen right now. Getting my masterpiece in. I have this stuff planted everywhere. Cinderella's got some, my pickup, every room in the house. Get a few drops every day, 5 times a day, because that's what clears out takes the IP address out of your body, all the NANO-CRAP they got in there. And I got to say something, folks. I listened to pardon me, I'm just getting all these injuries I have. I have to build my seats so I can survive sitting for 2 years or 2 hours. 2 years, man, that'd be a nice show. So I got to move around like I got Tourette's syndrome half the time. But yeah, I'm going to talk about a quick video somebody sent to me or I came across. It was I hate to use this word, some nobody with no credentials whatsoever, trashing Masterpiece, trashing Dr. Robert Young. This is what baffles me about social media. And then I'm going to get to the point of why we're here tonight. Can you tell somebody's rubbed me the wrong way? Anyways, so here you get this guy who's been an incredible healer for literally 50 plus years in his world. Has written world-renowned books on the subject of healing. The pH Miracle was a big one. Dr. Robert Young authored and changed the world, actually tipped the planet on its axis when it comes to natural healing with that book, The pH Miracle. And of course, he's sitting in prison now, as many of you know. He was railroaded in there by a criminal judge, a crooked DA, and assistant DA. And also Jane Clayson Johnson, another, I don't even what you'd call this, I refer to her as a person of ill repute, trying to get back into media from the old days when she was on a show with Bryant Gumbel 30 years ago. Now she wants back in. So the deal apparently allegedly looks like she was cutting a deal, worked to get Robert Young thrown in prison by making up lies about his free treatment of her mother at her begging request, to then turn against him, somebody he's known for 50 years, and lie in court to put him in prison. And then we have people like her, or we have people like this chick that was trashing Dr. Robert Young and Masterpiece on maybe X or something. I'm just thinking, where do these people come from? Like, sometimes I don't think there is enough rocks on the planet that these people can actually be hiding under when they come out from underneath them. But I'm looking at this person, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is this? I mean, you have no credibility, no credentials, and you have a guy who's done what he's done all of his life. And this is the kind of stuff that they come up with. Anyways, so that person some girl, oftentimes I look at the backdrop of what they have in the background. Most people use green screens, like and sometimes I see people who will be in, look, I grew up lower middle class America. I can say these things because I grew up, in lower middle class. I grew up in Redneckville. And the reality is, if I'm going to shoot a show, I'm not going to be sitting in a garage somewhere with cats running all over the place and knocked over oil cans and shit all over the place looking disgusting. I'm going to have a nice backdrop, be somewhat professional. But when I see these people that look like they're, in a well-worn trailer park, and they're out there doing their narrative. They sound relatively intelligent, but I'm just thinking to myself, who would buy into it, number one, and what have you ever done in your world that can merit having even an opinion that people should listen to on a subject like this? And it just happened to be Masterpiece. This is the scientific breakthrough product Dr. Robert Young perfected to strip everything out of your system. And Jesse Beltran went over that on his show, to strip out the nanotechnology that has you hooked up to the Internet of Things. Yes, you have a personal IP address. This is the only thing Jesse Beltran, in his extensive science and research and clinical testing for 2 decades, says removes any of that crap. So anyways, just a little promo because I was taking mine. Been a bit of a trying week here, just on a personal note. Say prayers for Tomahawk. He's in critical care tonight. Got blindsided 4 or 5 days ago. He just wasn't himself, which is basically just, I don't know, trying to put a tornado in a bottle. It's really what he's like. But yeah, he just kind of went down, was lethargic, and for days, and just would look up at you with his eyes moving. He wouldn't maul me every time I look at him. It was very sad to see this, and we got him into critical care, and some serious liver kidney problems happening there. We don't know what it was. If it was leptospirosis, which is something that comes up from rodent urine or feces, I guess, urine. And it can be devastating. Seems like it's on the rise everywhere around the country, and it can destroy your kidneys, livers, other things. But so either that or some toxin or poison got to him. And I have my some theories on the poisoning side of him, but I don't know. I know last night I was resigned to the fact I might be losing him. It was a very difficult 24 hours. Tonight, a little different. They're flushing his kidneys, just pushing a shit ton of water through him. He's on certain antibiotics if it happens to be this particular bacteria, this leptospirosis. Getting in front of that, just hammering away with antibiotics, and we'll find out. Those tests take like a week to get back. It's kind of strange how that is, but whichever it is, I walked in hours ago, and I saw the old Tomahawk within 24 hours. Last night, it was kind of depressing. He would, move around and was on his feet, and would try to be himself, which is a tenth of what he usually is. Went over today, and it was a miracle. It was a transition I never expected. I just was floored. They bring him into a room, to give you time with your animal, and he was just flipping out, peeing all over the place, which is what he does. He still has that puppy mode, and I don't like when he pisses all over my boots or whatever. I'm like, whiz away, buddy. Just go ahead. Stand there and empty it all in these boots. I'm so happy to see you jumping all over the place. I had to wipe the whole floor up. The only thing he didn't do was when he's jumping up and down on me, screaming like a little schoolgirl. That's the only thing he didn't do. But I think that'll be coming in the next phase. I'll see him tonight about 10 or 11 o'clock. I go over there. We spend time with him, as much as we want. Hopefully he's coming out of it, or at least we're heading in the right direction. We were thinking they're going to have to get him on dialysis in a different center here in Dallas area, a hugely expensive place to be to save his life, which, was going to be done no matter what. But anyways, we maybe have dodged a big bullet here. And I'm really hopeful in the next 24 hours, all these serious markers continue to go back in the direction that they need to ensure that, we don't have, that we keep Tomahawk, and pray we don't have any long-term damage, any kidney damage or anything like that. But it's been a pretty tough 5 days. So if you don't mind out there, say some prayers for the little furry missile, and hopefully, we get to keep him. Anyways, we got a great show lined up for you tonight. We'll give you a heads up on one guest, Sean Taylor, who has exposed the absolute Nashville corruption, the court system, law enforcement. I can't think of what their state level, like the FBI for the state of TBI, maybe Texas Bureau of Investigation, something. As we've been learning, a lot of corruption and criminals in these. I mean, we're talking criminals like this who will go in, break into a sheriff's home and his office and raid it and take all the evidence he has on the people they're protecting, right in the face of the people who have the evidence. That's what's been going on in Nashville. We're learning how unbelievably corrupt and criminal that place is. We love Nashville. We love the people, love the country music industry, a lot of those things that draw people to Nashville. But unfortunately, again, the power structure, as I say every day that I'm on this show, is corrupt, criminal, loaded with liars, thieves, and killers. And again, my disdain for the political class, I don't know if it'll ever leave me in my life, because I every day I get, I mean, I'm in tears 3-4 days a week, every week, if not more than that, just seeing how something in society is affecting me, where humanity is fighting for its life to just have a decent existence. And the shit storms always coming down on them, and it always is being driven by the political class. I don't care if it's local. Constant bullshit, constant opposition to living a free and happy life, constant interference, constant theft of your money. And obviously, I get to a point where I'm literally ready to just light the powder keg myself, me being a powder keg. I got to be careful. The MTPs out there will take that to the Daily Beast or Rachel Maddow or Dershowitz or somebody and start throwing that shit out there. And, hey, he said this, he said that. Also, what's amazing to me, I was just looking at a video tonight of a dipshit up in Pennsylvania that's been attacking me, or has attacked me from day one, when he sat in his basement and picked his nails in his ears and on a podcast, and we put shit out about me and the things that people actually believe. Like, it's absurd. But I look at this clown and I'm just watching this video tonight. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with America? A person like this has lied to an audience for years, and they still watch the guy. Proven lies, a convicted criminal. And there are days, folks, I just shake my head and I say, either how the hell did we get here, or are we ever going to get out of this? And I always have to recenter myself. My own gravity has to be rebalanced, because, look, I'm not, believe me, I'm not a saint. I can sin with the best of them. I'm not saying I'm here to be perfect, but I can tell you what I do and have done in my life. I strive every day to do the right thing. I treat every human with kindness, every human. I don't care what their socioeconomic status is, whatever. Even people that say shit about me that I'm finding out behind my back, spreading bullshit about me. Then I go to a party and I see them and they pretend they're my best friend in the world, when I know they're stabbing me in the fucking back. And you know what I do? I treat them as if I never knew about it, never heard about it, and don't even know it. They don't know I know, but I do know. And I just kind of check that box. I'll watch you go even be a fake and phony, and right here in front of me. But I don't need confrontations. I said from day one, Patriot Street Fighter is a 360-degree smoke out operation. From this desk, we'll find out, are you fighting for the people, or are you fighting for your own self-interest? It doesn't matter whether people, have any interest in that or not. It doesn't matter to me. It's my own interest. But that's how I give people enough time to be themselves, show who they are, and then we'll see, how serious are you about the Great Awakening? How serious are you about doing the right thing by people and being honest? Like, if I don't like somebody, I mean, there's something I really don't like about them, believe me, I will not say anything about them behind their back that I won't say right to their face. If they challenge me on it, yeah, I said it. I'd never back up something I said back away from something I said about somebody. If I said it, it's because I believe it and I mean it. And I don't look to say things about bad things about people, general acknowledgments. But anyways, I'm not really sure what put me on that narrative. So it looks like we're freelancing here for a few minutes until I think of something that's actually worth saying. Anyways, oh, the guy, yeah, well, the guy in Pennsylvania. I won't need to expand on this guy any further. I thought about showing you guys a video, but I'm just poking a bear that doesn't need. It's not even a bear. I'm poking a fruit monkey. That's really what I'd be doing. And I'm not going to do that because it doesn't serve any purpose except me getting a shot in at somebody who deserves it. But that's, again, not why we're here. So there was the topic that keeps landing in front of me nonstop and is going to become very prevalent in America is the Muslim Brotherhood invasion, or the Islamification attempt of the United States, is well underway. And, in my seat, as you can imagine, you got to think deeply about what kind of a battle you're going to take on. I didn't take care when I took on the criminals in DC, because I had decades of experience in the political world, the political class, being involved in elective politics, doing all the things I did to see what scumbags are drawn to this career path, to be a politician. Scumbags. People say, well, they're good ones. Really? If there are good ones, where the F are they? How did we have this country? I'm 61. I can remember what it was like when I was 12, 15, 20, and how much better of a country we had to where we are today. Of course, they concluded after time, it's always public policy, and these scumbags who run for office because they want to be part of the power structure, they don't want to help you, serve you. I don't give a shit what they tell you, folks. I was such an idealist, and people would say things to me, and they'd be like, you'll find out your idealism will wane. I'm like, you know what? Optimism is my force multiplier. That's never going to happen because I believe in America, believe in people. Once you realize the truth, then you give up the ghost and say, yeah, it isn't going to be done by the political class. It's going to be done. This country changing is going to be done by you, we the people. If we don't do it, if you don't attempt to do it or you don't participate, you have nothing to bitch about on this planet, on planet Earth, because it cannot be done by the political class. It cannot be done by the president. Trying to kill that volume. Got to go over and see what my friends are doing over in the chat room. The president, Trump, doesn't even have the constitutional authority to restore the republic. The Constitution gives that power to us, we, the people. So we have to be the ones involved. But you better wake up because this is coming. I want you to take a quick look at this video that we're going to play. Just more indicators and information on what is coming to this battlefield, and that is the movement for Islam to try to take over America, like they have done Egypt, like they've done Syria, like they've done Yemen, and a number of countries through the Middle East were always Christian until here they come. And again, I have friends that are Muslims. I have love for these people. They're good people. But the simple fact is, everywhere these people that come into whatever country, they start building mosques like crazy. Here they're using our virtues against us. They're building 25 to 30 mosques. They're built here in Dallas in the last 2 years. No Muslims in the area. They bring them in and they start the bullshit. I just watched videos of some Muslims kicking the living shit out of a lady right beside her car, 5 or 6 coming over, taking turns, kicking the shit out because she's a female. And they're, young aged, in her 20s, whatever, 30s. I'm going to tell you this, America. If our government doesn't do the job to export these people, there's going to come a time where all of you are going to have to start protecting these people in the streets. They go out there. If you see any of these Muslims beating the shit out of people in your city street and you stand there and watch them and do nothing, you don't deserve the freedom you have either. You have to defend your brothers and sisters. I can't even imagine. My buddy and I got a couple buddies of mine. They're pretty rugged dudes. We've said this all the time in our lives. I wish that shit would happen in front of us because it would be an absolute bloodbath with what these people are allowed to get away with by the law enforcement class in this country and the political class and the courts. And they get away with it. Anyways, I want to show you what this looks like from this gentleman's point of view. I love checking these things out on, this is from the post is from MAGA Storm. So let's listen here. It says, listen closely to historian Bill Federer. This isn't sugarcoated. He warns about 2030, Europe could be a Muslim majority. And once that happens, the shift won't stop at no-go zones. It just won't just be pockets of Paris, Belgium, or London. Entire cities could be transformed through the ballot box. He reminds people of the history that's been conveniently forgotten. Egypt was fully Christian for 6 centuries. It's not anymore. All of North Africa was Christian for 6 centuries. Gone. Turkey, home to all 7 churches named in Revelations, all overtaken by Muslim Turks. Constantinople, once the greatest Christian city on earth, saw Hagia Sophia, the largest church in the world, turned into a mosque. And now he says the same path is forming again. Muslim prayers have been allowed inside the Vatican. His warning is simple and chilling. We've seen this move before, and history shows exactly how it ends. Let's have a look at his commentary on this.
So they say that by 2030, there will be a majority Muslim population in Europe, and they'll just flat out vote in Sharia law. And it won't just be no-go zones where they take over entire neighborhoods in Paris or around Belgium and London. No, they'll take over entire cities. And people forget, Egypt was completely Christian for 6 centuries. It's not anymore. All of North Africa was completely Christian for 6 centuries. It's not anymore. All of Turkey, all 7 churches mentioned in the book of Revelation were all in Turkey. And they were all taken over by the Muslim Turks. Constantinople was the largest Christian city in the world, and the largest Christian church in the world for hundreds of years was the Hagia Sophia, and it got turned into a mosque. And And so they want to do the same thing with the Vatican. And recently they allowed Muslim prayers in the Vatican. So we see that's headed in that direction.
Wow.
And the tremendous number of burning of churches in Europe.
And if you talk about
since
this,
Islamic immigration.
So just wanted you to have a look and listen for yourself of where we are with this issue in the country. I'm going to keep just kind of probing this. I think I told you there's a documentary that's now underway. I'm going to have John Guindolo on here in the next couple of weeks, right after the first of the year, 20 years counterterrorism. He'd been warning the country, his FBI counterterror, he's been warning the country for literally 2 decades. You need to pay attention to what's happening. They have a silent Muslim Brotherhood invasion, which Obama obviously brought in masse under his regime, and it's all through government. Michelle Bachmann basically lost her congressional seat for hammering away on this issue. That goes to show you what a very popular Republican. Where were the other Republicans to get behind her, protect her? There weren't any because they're scumbags. One last thing before we bring in our guest, we're going to extend his time tonight because it looks like our guest, second hour guest, is going to be hammered in the weather too, not able to get internet or phone. But this will be a great segment because I'm going to show you how we can protect ourselves from these elites that hide behind their gates, towers, and walls that are only allowed for them. But last thing here, don't let Minnesota fraud circus. By the way, Charlie's voice rising. Thank you. This is on his X account. Don't let the Muslim fraud circus pull your eyes away from the real bombshell. Obamacare is now tied to 47 plus billion in missing outright fraudulent money. Just 1 year, 1 year, 47 billion, Obamacare. That is the game. They shoved Tim Walz into the spotlight to distract you while Obamacare laundering quietly bankrolls the DNC and the Uniparty. That's your Republican rhino scumbags, especially now that USAID cash has been cut off. Here's the part they're panicking about. Obamacare subsidies expire on December 31st, and Democrats are desperately dependent on that money stream. That's why they tried to strong arm President Trump for another $400 billion in Obamacare subsidies. They even shut down the government over it and then had the nerve to blame Trump. Let's be real for a second. Liberals are never getting free universal health care from Democrat elite, ever. Why would they? If health care were actually free and clean, there would be no way to steal taxpayer money through corrupt insurance middlemen. No lobbying doctors, no endless billing scams, no political slush funds. And here's the darkest truth nobody wants to say out loud. Corporations are poisoning Americans for profit would have to stop. Wow, that's becoming widely known too. Corporations are poisoning Americans, i.e. Operation Tomahawk, i.e. 11 multinational companies buying up all the rest that we grew up with. And those 11 are controlled by the 3 dark overlords, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So corporations poisoning Americans for profit would have to stop, because the entire profit chain depends on keeping people sick. Cancer equals cash, chronic illness equals control. That's why hospitals stay overloaded. That's the racket that never ends. It's not broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed. Liberals need to wake up and realize the system isn't left versus right. It's elite versus everyone else. The corruption is hurting all of us. The only way it stops is if people finally refuse to be distracted. Folks, Democrats, listen to me. Democrats, they're stealing from you too. They're stealing from you too. Anyways, that being said, one last thing quickly, pretty fun. This is from Barron Trump on X. Just in, Gavin Newsom is on a full-blown spree, caving into President Trump, and it's humiliating. J.D. Vance will absolutely destroy this guy in 2028. I guess J.D. Vance and Newsom are frontrunners. I have no idea. Newsom cancels his lawsuit after Trump yanks $4 billion from the high-speed rail to nowhere. So there is another $4 billion on deck for the high-speed rail that has received $18 billion over 20 years and not built one effing track. Not one rail has been laid. Not one railroad tie has been laid. $18 billion. Nothing's been built, and they want $4 more billion. And Trump said, "No, go, fork yourself." So Newsom into leverage that Trump put on him, he's tried to, I guess, probably grovel for money, cancels illegal alien CDL licenses, and is now getting sued by migrants for it. Imagine that. Migrants are going to sue the governor of California because he's taken away their illegal CDL driver's license. This is what happened when reality hits. Trump applies pressure, the bluff collapses, the grift ends. Newsom's entire brand is built on defiance and virtue signaling. Under real leadership, he folds instantly. California is watching their emperor lose clothes in real time. Now, so, wow, yeah, look at all these migrants, illegals killing people on the highways in semis and tractor trailers. I'm looking at it right here in this video on the commentary that I just read. Anyways, that being said, there is a way in this country to protect yourself. And what most of you don't know, the reason the wealthy, they always say the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. The fact of the matter is that's 100% true, always has been. And why do the rich keep getting richer? Well, now today we know it's just outright criminality and corruption. That's a fact. Prior to where it got so bad in the last 10 to 20 years, from an economic and a commerce standpoint, business or otherwise, it's true. The rich get richer. Why is that? Because the rich are doing something right and they keep repeating it. And the poor do get poorer. Why is that? Same converse reason. The poor are doing it wrong in this system and they keep doing it that way, no matter what the results are, right? So, first and foremost, when you do have anything of value, you need to learn how to protect it. And you can protect it using the exact same legal, lawful, constitutional structures that all of these rich bastards, they're not bastards because they're rich. I just needed a point of emphasis to call them a name because I want to make sure they know I hate their effing guts. I just want them to know that. I don't know if I've ever made them feel that way, but I just want to make sure tonight they have that inclination. The reality is that, folks, there's ways that you can do what they do, use the system that they use to make sure you're always protected. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about operating in the common law status of protecting assets or whatever else you do in your life. And I'm going to bring on one of the experts in the world who's been at this, setting these things up for literally 3 decades. And on top of that, he's a brilliant library of knowledge on how we got to where we are today, what they did to get this country in this position, the system they put in place, which enslaved all of us, and how his endless studies on his own in the libraries uncovered the truth about what should be allowed and is done by many of us out here in protecting assets and everything else that you rightfully own and keeping the government's grubby hands out of it. And that is why you're looking at my good buddy, Brent Johnson. You've seen him here before, Freedom Bound International. With a number of us have actually helped us set up our lives in a way that we get to control it, and we are protected. I don't know if I'd say control it, somebody else does, but they have our best interests in mind in protective structures to keep their grubby effing hands off. So Brent Johnson, wonderful to see you here tonight. Hope the volume's working well.
And the first thing, whenever I see you or listen to you, the first thing I want to say is, tell us how you really feel, Scott. It's such a pleasure to hear somebody who is authentic, who is genuine, which has always been one of your greatest appeals to me, is you're real. You may agree with him, you may not agree with him, but he's genuine. He's the real thing. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, and I'm actually, I am genuine. I know that. And I am also humble enough to admit that you may not believe in everything or agree with me, but I'm humble enough to admit that the longer you listen to me, the more you're going to agree with me. So that's just humility.
Because you make sense. Okay. And people on the inside, most of them have a craving for what making sense. What's going on out there is insane. I said that 30 years ago. I said, we're living in an insane asylum. Okay. And everybody is an inmate or
True.
somebody who's standing outside of the asylum. There, as a matter of fact, let's go a little bit off topic. There is a great movie. If you've never seen it, it's called King of Hearts. It's from the 1960s. Have you seen it?
No, I had
Oh,
something else I caught my attention. I was going to share with you, but
it
continue that point.
it stars Alan Bates, who most of you have never heard of, and it takes place in World War One, where Bates is a British soldier, and he's been assigned to go to Scotland to check out reports that the Germans are about to blow up a town. And he finds out the reports are true. So he and his task force are told you have to evacuate everybody from the town because we can't stop them from blowing this up. And when he's going through the process, they have almost everybody evacuated, and he comes upon a building, and he goes through a gate and he finds this building. It turns out it is the local insane asylum, and it's occupied by heavy duty crazy people. I mean, they dress up and they take on roles. I'm the king, you're the queen of hearts, whatever. Okay, they're nuts. And they're so nuts that they don't understand what's going on. He tries to tell them, you got to get out of town. The place is going to blow up.
Mm.
They absolutely cannot even relate to it. It's a wonderful movie because by the end of the movie, he actually gets touched in the heart by the innocence of these people. But it is also a very clear statement as what it is like when you are surrounded by crazy people and you're trying to make sense. But you've got to understand they're going to blow up the town. It just goes over the head. It's like
kind of like we've been for the last 5 to 10 years,
yeah.
trying to help people see the reality. Everybody, you have 500 people run into a hospital and they get a shot. Everybody's standing in line and as everybody's walking out, having just got their kill shot, 3 out of 5 are dropping dead before they hit their cars in the parking lot. Folks are watching. Did you just get the shot? Yeah. Oh, okay. I better get in there and get mine. Hurry. So that's kind of craziness. There's always some there's always truth in humor, right? And there happens to be just one. I just want to give a shout out to Eagle Harbor over here in the chat. I just happened to look over and I saw this. Eagle Harbor says, I love this, Brent. Eagle Harbor says, warning, drugstores are running out of tampons due to the rise of pussies in America. Patriot Street Fighter excluded. Good one. That's a good one. Eagle Harbor.
That's good. Yes, that's good.
So, Brian Matter says, we are the last standing country to stand for freedom and independence, including strong desire to return to our Constitution and Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence. Here's a question I want to ask you to kick this thing off. It's an intriguing concept and topic. And I know, since you and I met each other and then you've been working with Ann Vandersteel and a slew of other people on the same topic of your story, if you don't mind glossing over that again, because some people have not heard that, of how you discovered what you discovered and then spent years of studying all the books, law books, taxes, the IRS codes, all of it to say, hey, here's what Patrick Henry did. Here's what all these people have done since that time up to today, how they're able to protect all their assets and protect their wealth accumulation. Let's begin there at the beginning, how you came to do what you do and know what you know.
Okay. And I'll tell you the absolute truth. This started in the early 90s, and I knew nothing about any of the things I discussed today. As a matter of fact, I was under a payment agreement with the IRS, and I was paying the minimum every month. So over the years, the principle never changed. And one day I get a notice from the IRS, and it says that you owe us more money. And I didn't have it. I had no way to get it. I thought my life was over. I was throwing furniture. I was done. A friend of mine said, "Oh, you don't have to pay that." I said, "What planet are you from? This is planet Earth. We're talking income taxes." She said, No, no, no. You don't have to pay that. And call my husband and have a conversation with him. So I said, what the hell? Why not? So I called up her husband. We had a conversation. He ended up introducing me to a woman who became my teacher. And as she started teaching me, and it was very, very good lessons, I said, my God, if half of this is true, you teach me what you know, and I will take it to the world. That was what I promised her, and I've done that. And once I thought I had learned enough to be able to check things out, I was living at the time in Northern California, and I went to the Marin County Law Library, an excellent law library. And I spent 2.5 years in the law library researching everything that I'd been taught to see if any of it was valid, if any of it was true. And by the time I got through, I was convinced that, yes, it was true. And so I made myself the original guinea pig. And I filed various documents with the Social Security Administration and with the Internal Revenue Service. And then I stopped making payments on my payment plan. Of course, I get notices from the IRS that says that you're late with your payment. And based upon what I'd learned, I responded accordingly. And the IRS and I went back and forth for a few months, and then they stopped. That was 30 years ago. Now, I am a professional broadcaster. I have literally had millions of people around the world hear my voice. I actually walked into a shop, a gag shop in Cape Town, South Africa, spoke with the proprietor, gave him my card. He looked at it and said, "Oh, I listen to you all the time." So, I mean, literally, people from all over the world have heard my voice, including, I'm sure, IRS agents. And I've gone on and I've talked about this kind of stuff, but they leave me alone. Why is that? Okay. I am not a person of interest. I did have one time that they raided me when I was the new kid on the block. They raided me. It was strange because I had in my studio, I had an area where I had little columns, and in each column I would put paperwork on a particular topic: Federal Reserve, IRS, Social Security, whatever. And if I was doing a show on that topic, I would go in and use that as my research material. And the interesting thing is, they didn't take anything out of the IRS cube. They did take everything out of the Federal Reserve cube. I thought that was noteworthy. But the sheriff was there. By the time I was done, they actually stole 2 of my gold numismatic coins, which is illegal. Okay. And they left. I decided it was time to move. So we relocated. Okay. And never heard anything else. 7.5 years later, I get a letter from the IRS. You are no longer a person of interest. Here are your 2 numismatic coins. We're returning them to you.
No shit. Are you kidding me?
No. And I still have those coins. Yes, I still have those coins. Also, the person who headed up the task force that raided me ended up getting fired.
No shit. Wow. Yeah. That's everybody here loves to hear that. That is awesome.
But what I learned, what I actually had done was I had withdrawn my permission for the government to assign me with the Social Security number. I took back my permission for them to assign me with the number. This wasn't a request. There was nothing they could do about it. And then I notified the IRS that I was not subject to their jurisdiction. And I sent an affidavit of tax-exempt foreign status, foreign meaning foreign to federal jurisdiction. And since that day, I don't have a number. Now, there's a two-edged sword there. Okay, number one, okay, because I don't have a number, I'm not a taxpayer. They leave me alone. As far as they're concerned, I don't exist. They are literally colorblind to somebody like me. They can't see me. That's why I can go on the air and they still leave me alone. Because as far as they're concerned, I don't exist. However, it also means that I cannot avail myself of the benefits of government. I cannot get welfare or food stamps or Medicare or Medicaid. I can get health care if I want to pay for it, but I cannot get it at the expense of all of you out there. Okay.
Mhm.
Because the truth is, I don't have a right to demand that you feed me if I'm hungry. I don't have a right to demand that you take care of me if I'm sick. That's not uncompassionate. That is a value that says my freedom, my gift from God of independence is more important to me than the socialistic principle that you'll take care of me if I need something. Okay. And most people don't want to do that. Most people do not want to take that step because it is a life-changing step. But that is how I got started. And that was your question. Now, what I learned over time, and I've done seminars on this, and of course I've done shows, and what I've learned over time is there are three basic things that are involved in freedom. They are the preservation of the God-given right to life, the God-given right to liberty, and the God-given right to
Property,
property.
property, not pursuit
Correct.
of happiness.
No,
Do you
no.
notice how they took property out of that statement and they inserted pursuit of happiness? They took out property. Why? Why did they change Benjamin Franklin's answer to Mrs. Powell when he came out of the Independence Hall? What did you give us, Mr. Franklin? Did you give us a monarchy or a republic? He said a republic if you can keep it. He
Mhm.
didn't say a democracy. He said, well, FDR in that era changed it to democracy, which is total bullshit. They
Mhm.
hated democracy. So the
Mhm.
last thing that they wanted to ever, it's not even mentioned in our constitution. They want nothing to do with democracy
Mhm.
because it is mob rule. But there again, they changed that too. Right to life, liberty, and property.
And property, and that is correct. Now, life is up to you, your friends, your family, your brethren, your loved ones. You each need to watch each other's back, okay? Because life is precious. Liberty involves severing the ties that have caused you to waive your rights. Understand, you have God given rights, and among those rights, you have the right to contract, and you can enter a contract in which you waive your rights. You have the right to do that. So think of it as a tool like a hammer. I have a hammer and I've agreed I'm going to put the hammer on the shelf and I'm simply not going to use it. Well, that's what most people have done with their rights because if the government gives you benefits, things that you were not endowed to you by God, but things that the government has given you, there is always a price to pay. And the price is that you agree to conditions that require you to waive your God given right to liberty. You literally become a subject of the corporate state. That is why you could walk into court, argue the Constitution, and you'll get a judge who'll say something like, Constitution doesn't apply in these matters, because it doesn't. The Constitution protects your rights from being violated by the government. If you've waived your rights, there's nothing for the Constitution to protect you from. Therefore, the
Mhm.
Constitution doesn't apply. That's how most people live today. However, what I learned is that the first step towards freedom is not protecting your right to liberty, it is to protecting your right to property. The reason for this is if you go protect your right to liberty and the government wants to go after you, they'll just go after your property. They'll threaten to take it. They'll find ways to do that.
Mhm.
And that's a pretty compelling argument for most people. They're going to take my house. They're going to take my salary. They're going to take this. They're going to take that. But if you protect your property rights first and you do it correctly, which I have done, by the way, I'm the original guinea pig. Everything I teach, I did to myself first. And if you protect your property rights correctly, you don't have any liability. The government is staffed by criminals. The character of criminals is they seek to take what's yours and make it theirs. That's what criminals do. If you have nothing they can take, they're not interested in you and they leave you alone. Me, I have no liability. Because I have no liability, they ignore me. They can't get anything from me. So I'm not a person of interest. And the mechanism that I recommend in most cases for accomplishing this is the use of something called a pure trust organization. Now, pure trusts have been around since before America. The oldest pure trust in America was set up by Patriot Patrick Henry in 1790. It was called the North American Land Company, and it existed in some form for 200 years before it finally shut down. But Patrick Henry's not the only one by any means who has used these devices. John F. Kennedy, I think it was just before he became president, but I'm not entirely sure. But my producer, Lee, has told me she remembers what I'm about to tell you. She remembers seeing the story in the newspapers. Okay. And the story was this: if you're John F. Kennedy, you don't have anything that you own in your own name. Nothing. You know, because ownership equals liability. That's a set standard and it applies all over the world. Doesn't matter if you're the owner, a trust is, a corporation, the owner of property carries the liability for that property. And Kennedy, like most of the globalist elite, owned nothing. And Kennedy had a cat. When you're Kennedy, you don't own anything. So he had set up a pure trust organization to hold this cat. And it was the only thing in the cat in the trust was the cat. One day, the cat scratched somebody on the face badly. The guy said, "I've been scratched by a Kennedy cat. I'll sue." So he did. He sued. He won the case, and he was awarded the cat. Now, everybody laughs. Yes, it's very funny, but there is a moral to that. If Kennedy had one of his mansions or yachts or Rolls Royces in the same trust as the cat, then it could have been attached to satisfy the damage award from the case. But because there was nothing else in the trust but the cat, the guy won the case, he got the cat. And it's a wonderful story, and it's not the only Kennedy story. Many of you may remember the incident in Massachusetts with Mary Jo Kopechne and Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was driving over Chappaquiddick Bridge. I think it was 1969. He drove off. He was drunk as a skunk. He drove off the bridge literally and into the water. She died. He did not. Now, right after the incident, people had video showing Kennedy stumbling. He couldn't stand up. He couldn't walk straight. The entire world knew that Ted Kennedy was responsible for the death of Mary Jo Kopechne. No argument there. Her parents sued for the wrongful death of their daughter. The insurance lawyers came to the parents and said, "We will give you $30,000. If you don't take it, you will get nothing because Ted Kennedy owns nothing." Now, as it happens, at the time, Ted Kennedy had in the public record something called a notice of civil death. A notice of civil death is a public notice that says that the individual over whom it applies, cannot own property. It is lawful proof that Ted Kennedy owned nothing. So Mary Jo's parents could have sued. They would have won the case. They would have got a substantial damage award against Ted Kennedy because the whole world knew that he was responsible. But they never could have collected on it because Ted Kennedy owned nothing. Now, the key is this is not like Klaus Schwab saying you will own nothing and you will love it. No. Okay. That's a socialistic or Marxist world. That's not what I'm talking about. The thing is, if you own nothing, but you carry the practical control of that property, that's where you can truly benefit from it. In other words, ownership equals legal control. Legal control equals liability.
Liability.
Correct. So if you own property, you are liable for that property. If the government wants to go after your property, they don't even have to know where it is. They just have to find your liabilities and draw a straight line to your property.
Mhm.
When you no longer own anything and it's in pure trust, then the trust carry the liability. However, through internal agreements between the trust and you become the practical controller without carrying the liability of legal control. For example, you put your car into a pure trust. The trust owns the car. It gets title in the name of the car. Then the trust issues you a lease agreement. If the cop ever pulls you over, you'll see it's registered to the trust. Why are you using a vehicle that's registered to somebody else? Well, I lease it. Here's a copy of the lease agreement. They will leave you alone. It's perfectly acceptable.
Mhm.
You put your house into trust. Once the house goes into trust and it gets recorded in the name of the trust, now if anybody has a grievance against you, let's say the IRS wants to go after you, they can't go after the house because in the public record it shows you don't own it. However, the trust will hire you as, say, general manager. Your job is to take care of the house. Your compensation is you and your family get to live there rent free. So now you have practical control of the property. You can do what you want there. You want to paint a room. You want to, build a garage. You want to do whatever you want to do. You can do it there. However, you do not own the property. You can honestly say, if the IRS comes knocking at the door, you can honestly say, hey, buddy, I just work here. You're going to have to go talk to the owner. And that's the truth. You have a contract. You actually work there. But through the agreements, you get practical control. And this is what I found out over the years. I found out people do not necessarily want legal control. They want practical control. I want to be able to use the property as I see fit. Okay. But I do not want to have the legal control, which is what the wealthiest people in the world know and have known for years. And you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to go into debt. You're supposed to continually have obligations. Your debt gets secured by your property. That keeps you owning property. All of it comes together. And it's designed to prevent you from being able to assert your right to property. Once you have asserted your right to property, then you can go around and protect your right to liberty, because then the government, criminals, there's nothing they can do to you. They literally, I don't own anything, and they leave me alone.
That how so people obviously are asking how does that happen? How do you go about it? And how do I do that? I know we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it, the mechanics and what that structure looks like. One thing I'd like to ask you before we get deep into that. So when you're looking at the public side of the things that you're giving up, Social Security, all those things, I mean, you're not going to get a Social Security check in the mail because you don't pay into it.
Well, let me stop you there. These are two separate things.
Unless you're from below south of the border of Somalia.
No.
You're not getting it, folks.
No.
Unless you're from Somalia or south of the border.
No. Many people, probably of my clients, most of them, who have gotten pure trust to protect their property, have not rescinded their Social Security numbers, and they still avail themselves of the benefits of government. These are separate issues. Okay, you can protect your property rights and still suckle on the socialistic, I believe, unethical processes that the government makes available to you. Now, I've done both. I cannot apply for any kind of benefit from the government. If I did so, it would be fraud. Okay, I don't have a number, but most people are hesitant. It's a life-changing experience. Most people are hesitant to get rid of the number, but they're very happy to deal with the trust and the protections that provides. And by the way, somebody just posted, I just saw it on the screen, the question, what happens to the mortgage if the house is in trust? The mortgage just answering whoever asked it. The mortgage is between you and the mortgage company. The trust has nothing to do with it. So you cannot use the fact that your property is in trust to breach your mortgage agreement. That you cannot do.
Can you get a mortgage if your property is in a trust and you're not the
No, no, no.
no.
If you cannot, the trust cannot get a mortgage. The trust does not have an EIN. It is a common law entity. However, if many of my clients having a mortgage is not a lien. It doesn't stop you from transferring your property. So I have clients who transferred their real property into trust, but they property as a mortgage. I simply tell them, you must continue to honor your mortgage agreement. You can't use the trust ownership to breach the agreement, because that would be constructive fraud. That can get you into trouble.
And folks, the trust that he's talking about is a pure trust organization.
Correct. It is not. If you go and ask a lawyer, he won't know anything about it.
No, I know that's true very much, because I've had to deal with lawyers and they don't understand these things. Also, is a PTO the same as a UCO? Same thing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So
okay.
You may hear that.
A PTO, pure trust organization, is what it is called. A UCO, unincorporated contractual organization, is what it is. It's kind of like IBM, International Business Machines, is a corporation. So the name of the corporation is IBM Inc. Okay. The name of the trust is such and such trust, UCO. That's the extender for it. It's what it is. So yeah, a pure trust is an unincorporated contractual organization.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's a contract. It's a private contract in the real sense of the word, private.
Yes. So I'm going to lead the witness here, even though I know a number of these answers. But let's say, for example, the upside. Is there any upside to keeping your SS number, your social security number, if people start create pure trust organizations and putting their assets in there to protect those assets? Is there any? Trying to think of the question I was going to ask you. I saw a rabbit. Or is there a downside to keeping your social security number, and is there an upside to it? Upside is obvious.
Okay, yeah. Here we get into a system of values. Where are your values? Now, my values are, I believe that truth is the word of God, capital T, truth. And so to me, truth is more important than anything else. To me, it is absolutely true that if you have a social security number, you've waived your God-given rights to liberty. And that's the downside of having the number. The upside of having the number is that you get to have government give you benefits that somebody else has paid for. Now, I don't consider that, because of my value system, I don't consider that an upside, but most people do. The other thing is that if you don't have a social security number, you cannot open up a new bank account. Now, any accounts that you have, you'll still have, but you can't open up a new one, even though lawfully you could. The policy of the banks.
Yeah. Let me throw this at you, because I had this conversation with Mickey Klon. She was on my show a number of times. Most of the people around the country know who Mickey is. Mickey's extremely well studied in a lot of these things at various capacities, but she had gone into a bank to open up, and she's an extremely successful business lady, built a tech company, sold it for many, many millions of dollars, and started other companies. So she's pretty bright that way. She went into a bank and tried to open up a bank account. And of course, she's extremely intelligent and can speak the language of the banker, the president of the bank. And of course, they were going to. And she said, look, I am choosing to operate in the private. I can lawfully operate in the private. I'm not operating in the public. And in the private, I am not going to have an EIN number. And I don't remember exactly the full context of the dialogue, but she was able to eventually get the banker to open up a bank account that wasn't tied to any of that stuff. because it's not operating in the public; it's operating in the private.
Mm-hmm. Well, it can be done because there's no law that says it can't be done. It can be done. However, most people don't have the patience to deal with it, and it does require a great deal of patience. The other thing is that if you do successfully open up such an account, it must be a non-interest bearing account, because interest on bank accounts, two things. Number one, when you take interest, you give the bank permission to use your funds for its purposes. It can use your funds. If it loses them, you're out of luck. Yeah, you have FDIC and all that, but still, you're screwed because you gave them permission to use your funds. But the second thing is that interest is always taxable. So when you have an interest-bearing account, the IRS is always watching your account. All of my accounts anywhere in the world are non-interest bearing accounts. So no bank can use my funds for its purposes, and the IRS doesn't pay attention to them. Literally, it's like colorblind to that. So I tell you that, all of you, because you think you're getting something for nothing. When you take interest from a bank account, you're not getting something for nothing. You're paying for it, and the cost is substantial.
Let's talk about how this works. Okay, somebody says, I want to protect my assets. I want to set up a pure trust organization. What does that mean? What are the steps that you take that are necessary? If you're able to get into that kind of detail.
Okay, I can, absolutely. First thing I generally recommend is that you set up a consultation with me, because then I could discuss what your personal issues are, what your assets are, what you want to accomplish, and all of that. For everybody, it's different. So I think that's a healthy thing to do. And what I generally do is the amount of money I charge for a consultation is like $250 for an hour. And if you get a trust within 30 days, you get $250 off. So it becomes a free consultation. It's not about the money. It's about making sure that if you move forward with a trust, you have some idea as to what you're doing, because it's a different language. Okay. We're dealing in common law. We're not dealing in statutory law. So ownership equals liability. So the idea is, whatever you're going to put into trust, the trust becomes the owner of the property. There are schedules in the trust: Schedule A, Schedule B. Schedule A is for real property, meaning land and structures on land, and Schedule B is for anything else. So let's say you want to put your house and your land in trust. On Schedule A of the trust, you would put the legal description of the property, you would sign it, you would seal it, and you would date it. Your seal under common law is your right thumbprint. Right thumbprint. That's your seal.
What color ink? What color ink?
I generally recommend a non-opaque ink, so anything but black.
Anything but black.
Okay. Yeah, red, blue, yellow, green. Yeah,
black. I'm curious. I've never asked you that question. Why is that? Why?
Well, it's just frequently people will put the thumbprint over their signature. Okay. Oh. And if you put the thumbprint over the signature and it's black, it obscures the signature.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
Okay.
But you also have the schedule witnessed by two people who also sign, seal, and date it. Okay. Once that's done and the trust is activated, now the property belongs to the trust. It's not your property anymore. You don't go about talking about my property, because it's not your property. You can't go out and borrow money against it. You may have already financed it. That's fine. But now that it's in trust, you can go out and refinance it because it's not your property. The other side of that is that since it's not your property, nobody can claim it for a grievance against you. So you do not carry the liability of ownership of that property. The more you put into trust, the less liability you have. The less liability you have, the more invisible you become to the criminals in government. So once the property is in trust, now in the case of real property, the trust will issue a warranty deed and send it to you and to get recorded. The reason you record it is because once it's recorded, anybody who wishes to make a claim against you cannot go after the property. If you haven't recorded it and it's still recorded in your name, even if the trust owns it, now you have a legal issue. If somebody goes after it, they're going to say, well, it's in the public record that you still own it. So that's the reason we do that. Okay. Once that's done, the trust will then hire you. Your job, like I said before, assuming it's your family house, your job is take care of the property, mow the lawns, keep it in good condition. It's a contract. Since it's a contract, there has to be consideration, compensation. There has to be. And so the consideration here is that you and your family get to live there rent free. You have gone from being an owner with full liability to a worker, a tenant with no liability. So now you have practical control of the property. You have practical control of the land. Nobody can take the land. The trustee cannot take the land. Nobody can do anything to the land, especially since you're the one who's living there. So now what you've done is you have done what the wealthy do. You have reduced your liability in terms of your house. Now you can do that with vehicles. You can do that with equipment. I have people who put their businesses in trust, put their business in trust. Okay. And then once the business is in trust, the trust will hire you to run the day-to-day operations of the business. But instead of being an owner with liability, you are a worker. You're just the boss. You do the hiring, the firing, but hey, I just work here. You're going to have to go talk to the owner. And that relationship gives you practical control without the liability of legal control. And I've been doing it for 30 years. We've had trusts attacked by the IRS. We had one trust attacked by the DOD. We've had individuals who've tried to pierce trust veils. Nobody in 30 years has been successful. The reason for this is that when you put your property into trust, you actually give up legal control of the property. Legal control means legally the ability to buy, sell, or hypothecate. Hypothecate means borrow against. So you can no longer sell or borrow against the property in trust. If you want to, let's say you want to refinance the house, fine. We'll take the house out of trust, put it back in your name. You can go out and refinance it. Okay.
Interesting.
But as long as it's in the trust, it's not yours. So you don't have legal control. And as long as that principle of legal control is properly protected, this goes to the administration of the trust. As long as it's done properly, the trust is impenetrable. It cannot be broken. It is not possible.
So you brought up an interesting point. So let's say you did want to refi or even get a mortgage on a property that you placed in a pure trust organization. So would you simply go out and I know you would issue a certain document, minutes or whatever, through the processes, the legitimate legal processes of actions within a trust to transfer the property back into your own name, so you can now show that you have deed and title of the property to get a mortgage on it or leverage against it for a loan. Once you have that, you now are personally liable for the mortgage, yet you can then turn around and transfer that property back into the pure trust organization. Is that right?
Yes and no. Okay. Half right. Okay. Once the property is transferred back into your name, it has to be recorded, because when you go for the mortgage, it must be recorded in your name.
That's what I meant when I put back. It was to go back to the county recorder's office, resubmit that, or have it have the paperwork filed to have it recorded in the name of the trust and filed
No,
in the.
no, no. Yeah, what I'm saying is when you transfer it out, let's say it was you and you had property in the trust and you want to go get it refinanced. So I take the property, let's say I'm the fiduciary owner, I'm the trustee. So
Trustee.
I take the property out of the trust, put it in your name, notify you that's been done, send you the warranty deed. You take it down to the county, you get it re-recorded in your name.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can go to the bank and do whatever you want to do. Once you've done that, you can put it back into trust,
Mm-hmm.
but you cannot put it back into the same trust.
Okay.
The
Oh,
reason,
it's funny you said that because I thought that's what you were going to say. You got to set up a new trust if you do that. But
yeah,
again, it'd be
and
worth it to
and
do it.
and the reason is very simple. If you what I said about legal control is the issue. If you could take the property out of trust, so you could refinance it, and then you could put it back in the same trust, that would show that you have legal control of the property. If you have legal control of the property, that is how these trusts are attacked. And it's the only way to attack one of these trusts.
Mm.
If you have legal control of the property, then the common law protections will not protect you. The trust will be invalidated and turned into a statutory trust. And the thing with the statutory trust is it's a trust that was created by Congress or by an act of the legislature. And the legislature controls it. They can change the rules governing such trust. A
Mm.
common law pure trust does not get its existence from the government. The government cannot do anything to control it. And the Supreme Court has issued many rulings. I have a laundry list of Supreme Court rulings on pure trust that say that if
Mm.
it is a pure trust, it is outside of statutory jurisdiction. That's the key to the pure trust. That's why it is so successful. But the only way it's successful is if the principle of legal control is honored. That's why if you take the property out of the trust to get it refinanced, that's fine, but you cannot put it back into the same trust. That is a form of structuring, and you can't do it. A good pure trust trustee would not allow that.
Okay. So, in terms of taking those steps to do such things, somebody would say, "Look, I want to put my home in a trust or whatever." How does that work? They reach out to you.
Yeah, they reach out to me. Like I said, generally, I would recommend that you have a consultation with
Consultation.
me
Yeah.
simply because I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. So I don't know how best to advise you until we have a conversation. But um, on the heels of that, if you decide to go forward and you want to do a trust, everyone will ask me, can I put everything into the trust? Can you? Yes. Should you? No. What I told you about the Kennedy cat, okay, applies here. You would, like, for example, I would never have you put your house and your car in the same trust. The house is arguably the most valuable thing you have. The car is arguably the most risky liability thing that you have. You're in a no fault state. You do nothing wrong. Some moron runs a stop sign. Next thing you know, you have a liability issue. If the car and the house are in the same trust, the house could end up being affected by that. So there are certain things I would never combine. I would tell you with vehicles, you could put a few vehicles into one trust as long as none of them is a Maserati or a Lamborghini or a Rolls. If that's the case, it would get its own trust. But the house, the house can, and the land can go into the one trust. But I wouldn't put two houses into the same trust. You might have, a parcel of undeveloped land that nobody's using. That you might put in with the house and the land. However, if that undeveloped land is used to have people over and have them go hunting, then I would never put it in with your house because somebody ends up getting shot and you have a liability problem that could attach to the house. So it depends on what you're looking to protect and what your objectives are. I would generally recommend against putting everything in one trust and just determining based on your needs how many trusts would probably be suitable. You don't need to get a trust for everything. For example, you put your house in trust, most people are going to put the contents of the house in trust as well.
Mm-hmm.
Contents of the house is the appliances, the furniture.
Into a separate trust as a house, separate from the house trust?
No, same.
All the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of questions I want to throw at you. Look like some good questions. Reagan, 1962, asks, "Can you put an LLC into a pure trust organization?"
No, but it's an interesting question because can you? Yes. Should you? No. Okay. So let me give you a complete answer to that. An LLC, by its nature, is a statutory entity. That's its nature. A pure trust is a common law entity. If you put the LLC into a pure trust, then the trust would own the LLC, but the LLC would still be a statutory entity,
Mm-hmm.
thereby poisoning the common law character of the trust. However, there are times I have clients who put in businesses. Business goes into trust. Now, business hopefully is going to make money,
Mm-hmm.
but a trust doesn't have an EIN, so it can't get banking. So what do you do with the money in the business? For those clients, what I recommend is setting up what we call a stealth LLC. That's not an official term. There's nothing called a stealth LLC, but it is a single member LLC out of South Dakota. The reason for South Dakota is it has the best privacy protections. And I believe that without privacy, you don't have liberty. And so privacy is a real big thing. So South Dakota does not require the manager, the owner, the member of the LLC to have his or her name in the public record. So nobody knows who controls this LLC unless you tell them. Now, once that LLC is set up, oh, one other thing. The owner of an LLC is the member. An LLC can have any number of members, but if an LLC has 2 or more members, it is treated like a corporate partnership.
Hmm.
And there are tons of regulations. However, an LLC with a single member is considered to be by the IRS a disregarded entity. Federal forms will actually say what type of entity, have little check boxes, and one of them will say disregarded entity. That's what it's referring to, either an S corp or an LLC with a single member. And disregarded entity means that the LLC does not have any reporting requirements. It does not need to file any returns whatsoever. Now, once you have set up that LLC, the trust that owns the business hires the LLC by contract to be a financial management agent. The LLC, having been hired to do this, uses its EIN to open up a bank account. You, presumably, are the member, the manager, and the signatory on the bank account. So you have practical control of the money. Now, the money for this account, however, belongs to the trust. This account has been set up specifically to receive money from the business owned by the trust. So you're hired to run that business. You're going to be paid $2,000 a week. You also have control of the account. So every week you can go and cut yourself a check for $2,000. You go down to the local Office Depot. You spend $100 on office supplies. You get a receipt. You come back. You cut yourself a check for $100 to reimburse you. Okay. So in other words, you have control of the funds, but not ownership of the funds. Okay. You have practical control of the day-to-day operations of the business, but not ownership of the day-to-day operations of the business. And that's how I use LLCs in connection with trust. They are used as contractors, not as being owned by the trust. And
So you have an unincorporated contractual organization doing business with an incorporated contractual organization.
correct.
That's lawful. That is lawful.
Absolutely.
Yep, gotcha.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
as long as you don't engage in fraud, you're fine. Fraud vitiates everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's even better because if you want to maintain stable protection, do the right thing. Don't be fraudulent.
Yep.
Don't commit fraud. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't
And
deceive.
and the process I just described preserves your privacy.
Mhm.
That, today
Privacy.
you have a
Yeah.
whole generation of people who don't care about privacy. Well, everybody knows everything about us. Yeah. And somehow that's supposed to make it okay. You know, it's not true. I rented a place about a year and a half ago. I rented a place from a guy who decided to look into me, and he happened to know some people at the FBI. And he gave them information about me, and they looked me up, and they couldn't find me. And the guy was actually thought that was strange. Why couldn't they find you? I said, because I value my privacy, and I have crafted my life to protect my privacy. Most people don't do that.
How,
I
how did
do
that
that.
how did that conversation go with him? Did he understand it? Was he okay with that?
No, no, he was half okay. I mean, I paid him up front for everything. I was a great tenant, so he had no complaints. But he used to be one of the top 100 wanted by the FBI. Okay, he found God. He went into becoming a pastor and all that stuff. But he knew people at the FBI, so
Hmm.
he thought the fact that they couldn't find anything on me was suspicious. But there was nothing, there was nothing illegitimate about it. So he just left it alone.
Interesting. Here's another question. It says, do employees of the trust, and this is going to be a wording issue answer, do the employees of the trust have to pay income tax if they have a social security number?
Good question. First off, you're right about the wording. The word employee is very specific to the IRS. And if you actually study the code, the Internal Revenue Code, you will see at the very end of the code, in most statutory law, all the definitions are at the beginning. In the Internal Revenue Code, all the definitions are at the end. So if you've been reading it from beginning to end, you have no idea what the words mean until you get to the end. The word employee means that somebody who works for an employer. That sounds perfectly reasonable. Then if you look up the word employer, the word employer is somebody who conducts a trade or business within the United States. Now, you then have to look up the term trade or business. The term trade or business means the performing of the functions of a public office.
Mhm.
So, the term trade or business means a government agency. The term employer means a government agency. The term employee means somebody who works for a government agency. If you work for a government agency, you have to pay the income tax because you're not entitled to work for a government agency. You can work for a private agency. Now, having said that, anyone who works for a trust signs a contract. The worker is a worker or contractor.
Contractor.
The word employee is not used. And as a matter of fact,
Mhm.
in the body of the contract for workers that I use for a trust, it specifically says this does not create an employee employer relationship of any kind. Okay. That's not what it's about. In this contract, regardless of whether you have a social security number or not, that's irrelevant. This is a private contract. If this contract says you will receive $1,000 a week for your work and says you will work for 40 hours a week, then what you're doing is you're actually trading 40 hours of your labor and getting back $1,000. That is what is called a zero-sum transaction. It is not income. The term income actually means a profit or a gain. I buy something for $1, I sell it for $2, I've made $1 in income. But when you have compensation for labor, there is no profit. You are trading your time for the compensation. So,
How does that
you,
not apply to a regular job where they're trading time for dollars?
well, hang on a second. Hang on.
Okay.
Let me stay on the trust first. So this relationship with the trust, whatever you're earning, you get 100% of whatever you're contracted to earn. There is no withholding. There is no. Furthermore, the trust has no reporting requirements to the statutory world. So it is certainly not going to report to the IRS that it paid you $1,000 because that is not a taxable event unless you choose to volunteer, which you can do. If you want to fill out a tax return and say, I earned $1,000 in taxable income and pay money on it, you're welcome to do that. But the trust will not do that because there is no law requiring it to do that.
So the trust will not hand out any W-2 forms. A trust will not ever give a contractor a 1099 because it's not required to. It's operating in the private.
That is correct. Now, having said that, okay, if you're working for a company, the company cannot withhold from you. That's why when you go to work, the company wants you to fill out a W-4. A W-4 is actually called a request for withholding allowance. That's the name of the form, meaning you are requesting to allow the company to withhold from your otherwise non-taxable compensation. That is how they get to do it. They can't withhold without that. Now, they will tell you, we can't hire you unless you agree to that. But that's not true. That's fabricated. But
so it's
that's
more or less they won't hire you if you don't sign it. That's really what it comes down to. They can, but they simply won't.
Yeah. Because their lawyers will tell them not to. That's the whole fabric. It all comes together. That's how it works. When you're dealing with a pure trust, you are completely outside of that system. That's why I say it's a different language in a very real sense of the word. For example, you're not an employee, you're a worker, you're a contractor.
And all this really, if I'm not mistaken, just from my own knowledge, this all began, or at least the launch pad where this became doable to the crime syndicate, the people who formed the corporation called the United States Corporation. It would have been back about that time where they set up these type of statutory arrangements that they could project on the people with the help of the political criminal class, rancid, sewer dwelling, bottom feeding scumbag bastards. So, sorry, I got carried away again.
Tell us how you really feel, Scott.
I get carried away sometimes. When I'm really pissed off, it gets really bad. But anyways, so from that point, look, these guys knew it was a shell game back then. All of these scumbags in Congress, they knew this was a shell game. Just like when they passed it, at the hour of midnight, Christmas Eve, the Federal Reserve Act, when virtually all the congressmen were gone, nobody came in and protested. Like, what the F are you talking about? Well, they all went along with it. They all went, for whatever reason, who knows? But it was at that time where they started to unravel the legitimate foundational structure of this nation in common law and brought in their statutory bullshit. And again, if we wouldn't have acquiesced to it back then, said, F you, this is a republic, no, they would have thrown their hands up. Oh, shit, you caught me. They'd have walked away, given up, and tried to figure out some other way to fleece you and steal what's yours, as they've done for 100 plus years. So it was about that time that they started to bring in this bullshit, this admiralty law system, from the Justice Department side of it, or that, didn't exist back then. But it was from that point forward, I believe that's when we started losing, or the rights in common law rights, specifically in the form of trust, was eroded, or at least knowledge also was buried. And they just basically faked us out and said, yeah, no, you have to abide by these statutes now. Who said so? Congress? No, we did. Oh, really? Oh, shit, I better abide by them then. Instead of doing this, that's what they all should have done. Go fuck yourself. Who are you? Get out of
Yeah.
my face. That's what the people should have done. But again, this type of acquiescence comes from one philosophical malady that exists among the human species living in this land called America. And that single commonality is this: they believe that government exists for their good and their protection and their benefit. And Reagan said it best in his inaugural speech in 1981, January 23rd, when he was out there laying it out. And he said, government isn't the solution. Government is the problem. And anybody talk like back then, that was like Patriot Street Fighter today, saying the shit that I was willing to say five years ago when we started this, in front of the whole world. Nobody was saying directly the things that I was saying. Like, look, folks, I don't care who your congressman is. They're an effing scumbag. They know everything I just told you for the last 6 months. They know all of it. And they go along with it because they bury you because they have the benefit that the rails have been greased to bring right to their effing doorstep. They're scumbags. And coming right out and attacking these people, it just came naturally to me because, I did become the turncoat against these criminals. But Reagan, look at Reagan. At that time, we believed in the idea and the power of government for the good of a nation. And Reagan, in front of all these scumbags, senators, and these were actually good men and women back then in the late 70s and 80s compared to these rancid sewer dwellers today. But even back then, he said, government isn't the solution. Government is the problem. And he said in front of the whole country, like, what? He said that about all these people. Yeah, he said it to him. He said, because it was true. And he had such a way to bring that message to people and start pushing back on their crime syndicate. In many ways, obviously, he was ahead of his time and he didn't have all the years he would have needed to do what needed to be done. Plus, George H.W. Bush set up the assassination, hit on him to try to end all of it. And then once he did that, he did have some leverage and control over government from that point forward. But back to that.
Let me address a couple of things there. First of all, my favorite founding father is Thomas Paine. Now, I love Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, Patrick Henry, all of them. But Thomas Paine wrote an essay back in the 18th century called Common Sense. You can still get it today. It's very good. And in Common Sense, he wrote of government that government at its very best is a necessary evil. Now, most people
think about. I got to stop you there. I want the folks to focus on what you just said. Say that one more time.
Government at its very best is a necessary evil.
At its very best is a necessary evil. And prove that wrong, people. Prove it wrong. Look at what these bastards have done in DC to the nation and the world and your state house representatives, all these worthless shitbags in Austin, Texas.
Well,
a governor's mansion, local politicians, same bullshit. Look what they have done to your way of life. In fact, I just found out here in Texas, just south of Dallas, there is a town that they have uncovered through its taxation policies, sends $4 million a year to Israel. Imagine that. They're getting billions already from us, the taxpayers out of DC, billions. And look what they do to this country and the world. And they got local municipality. Look, I was all bought into the whole narrative. Like I said, I've been in within 10 feet of Benjamin Netanyahu setting at events in Southern California and people like that thinking these people are amazing world leaders, etc. I bought into it all too. But now we know the truth. But anyways, that's just a side note. I'm going to keep the gasket sealed tight on top of the piston cylinder tonight. I'm not going to let loose here. We got to stay on point.
Well, let me say what when most people read or refer to the Thomas Paine quote, they refer to it to say, you see, government is necessary. When I read it, it is always a reminder that the nature of government is it is fundamentally evil.
Evil.
Government is not your friend. Government is evil. Now, here's the thing. The Constitution was created as a limitation on government because the founders knew that government left unchecked will do terrible things.
Mhm.
That was the purpose of it. But the Constitution is like a whip and a chair, and the government is like a beast or a lion. And if you take a whip and a chair and you put it in a cage with a beast or a lion, nothing happens because there's something missing. Try it. Put a whip in a chair in a cage with a beast and see what happens. Nothing will happen. The reason is that it's missing an ingredient. The ingredient is the lion tamer. The lion tamer is the one who picks up the whip and the chair and uses it to tame the beast. We, you, me, all of you, we are the
Together.
lion tamers. And
Mhm.
we have been remiss. We have not done our duty. And that is why, God's honest truth, that
That's
is
why.
why the government, the beast, has gotten out of the cage and
Yeah.
become as horrible as as it has become. It's because we didn't do what we need to do. Like you said, if they just said at the time, no, we won't go along with this.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. One point I want to add to that before I bring the next question up for you, Brent, what I'd add to it is it's been well documented. All the things that were said in the Federalist Papers, the writings, the speeches given by the founding fathers, and one is as true as the day is long. Is that when people or when the government fears the people? When the government fears the people, there's liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny.
Tyranny.
Now, and I want to, one remark I want to make because I think about this from time to time. This is for the audience. When I'm always talking about DC and shelling these shit bags, folks, and talking about government, mind you, I'm not talking about President Trump and the operation that's been there for 10 years trying to take this thing down and get their pants down around their ankles so you can all see what shitbags these people are. I'm not referring to this government of Donald Trump. Yes, he's got a lot of rancid people, sewer dwellers, that have circled inside that camp and their infiltrations everywhere, but don't think they don't know about it. But I'm not, and President Trump knows I'm not talking about that government. He knows I'm talking about all the other bullshit that he knows of. Question I had here it's an interesting question, but I think there's ancillary answers to the questions that spin off this. If I put a 1923, it says T bucket, whatever that means, built by I guess by scratch or from scratch in a trust, and will it to the family members, do I designate who has control over it when I do? Thanks for that. I love that. It says theirs can never sell. I think they just put the wrong. They must be narrating with their his.
And by the way, look who that quote is from.
Oh, it is. Yeah, Thomas Paine. I'll be damned. I thought it was somebody in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. I mean, these people. This is what people knew about government in the. I hate to say the ruling class, but at least in the aristocratic class, because it was the aristocratic class that actually got the common people like myself to go to war with criminals in England and in their empire. It was the wealthy people. It was the ones who had everything to lose. Those of privilege were offered more privilege, more title, more land, more nobility. Nope, we want freedom. F you. That's
Well,
once you have everything, right? Material in the material world. Back then, you got to admit, Washington, he had everything he could want in the material world. John Adams, they had ships. Sam Adams, Christ's sakes, they had ships, merchant ships. They lived a good lifestyle. They had everything they could want at that time.
mm-hmm.
If you don't have freedom, none of it means anything. If you
That's
don't have freedom. Now, so yeah, let's get back to put something in a trust and will it to family members. You want to explain the dynamics of that and also
okay.
being able to sell those things or have them sold or whatever, how
Okay.
that works.
Okay. So first off, when you put property into a trust, initially, meaning when you first put property, when you're just having the trust created, the process is called an exchange. You're not selling the property. You're not gifting the property. You are exchanging the property. The exchange goes like this. You are taking something that you own and putting it in trust. And in exchange, you receive the beneficial interest in the trust.
Keyword.
Beneficial interest. Now, a trust, any trust, even a statutory trust, a trust is a right of property held by one party for the benefit of another party. That's the legal definition of a trust. So a pure trust is a trust that holds property for the benefit of others. Okay. So you are the what's called the exchanger. You initially put property into the trust and you received all of the beneficial interest in the trust, which comprises 100 units. So each unit is a percentage of the beneficial interest. Now, you might decide to share some of that with your spouse or children or whatever, but that initially is your beneficial interest. Now, once the trust is created, you are asked to tell, let's say you're having a trust created through us. One of the questions we will ask you is, what do you want to do about successorship? If God forbid something happens to you, who gets your beneficial interest? You might say, I want my spouse. You might say, I want my children. You might say something else. Okay. You got 100 units of beneficial interest. You could decide how many units each successor gets. And that goes into the body of the trust so that these are your successors. There is no will here because if you die, the property in the trust is still in the trust. All that has changed is the beneficial interest. So there are no inheritance taxes, no transfer fees, no anything. All of the costs that you're used to seeing associated with your death, none of them occur in a pure trust organization. Absolutely nothing. Now, you have to understand, as long as the trust holds the property, you don't own it. Your successors don't own it. The trust owns
Trust
it,
owns it.
which means you can't sell it, but the trust can. So, for example, I've had people with vehicles in trust because I want to have the trust sell the vehicle. Okay. Yeah. You go out, see if you can find a buyer. You find a buyer. Let me know what the agreed upon amount is. Let me know the name and address of the buyer. I'll prepare the bill of sale and I'll prepare the trust minute transferring the property. So I've done that a number of times. It absolutely can be done. So once that's done, the proceeds can be simply distributed over to the beneficial interest holder. The holders of beneficial interest are entitled to distributions from a pure trust. Distributions from a pure trust are not taxable events. So the property was sold for $5,000. Okay. Now a distribution of $5,000 is done. So the $5,000 ends up going into your pocket. And it is a non-taxable event. That's how sales can be done by the trust. Now, if you want to sell something and you want to sell it, that can only be done if the trust transfers the property out of trust back into your possession. Then you have legal control and you can sell the property. I hope that answers the question as it was asked.
So maybe I'm a little confused on that one. To sell the property, if a trust wants to sell a property, it has to transfer the property out of itself into the name of somebody else.
No. If the trust wants to sell the property, the trust can sell the property.
Okay.
If you want to sell the property that is in trust, then the trust has to transfer it into your name because you can't sell trust property because you don't own it.
Own it. So there's a role, you're the trustee. You're the trustee of the trust you set up, which means you're the one that basically has fiduciary control of it, right?
Correct.
Now, somebody's going to say, so basically, I have what I put into trust. You're the one that controls it. how do I know you're going to be doing with it what I want done with it? Or how do I know you're not going to sell it? How do I know you're going to do whatever?
Okay.
What's the protective mechanism for that?
Number one, the trust contract prohibits that. But
Mhm.
forgetting about that for a moment, there are numerous ways to protect property in trust. Now, for example, okay, you have a house in trust. You have a contract that hires you, that allows you and your family to live on the house.
Okay.
How can I sell the house out from under you? How could I do that? You're there on the house. It can't be done. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, having said that, okay, there are things that can be done for people who have those concerns. For example, you slap what's called a common law lien on the property in your name. You put a common law lien on the property to secure your interest in the property that is now owned by the trust. That freezes title in the name of the trust, and nobody can get access to that title unless you
Mhm.
release the lien. Period. So
Mhm.
end discussion. In the case of vehicles, okay, the trust owns the vehicle, but you have the lease agreement. You have the physical control of the vehicle. How can I sell a vehicle if I don't have the physical control over it?
Hmm. So even if you could go up and have an extra key to the car, but somebody else has it under lease, you can't take that car because it's under contract for somebody else to be using, right?
That's correct. And how would I even get that extra key? Think
True.
about it.
That's true.
Think
Oh yeah,
about it.
you never
Okay.
had it in the first place
Yeah,
because the car was
use
put into a trust that you right.
that's correct. The car was put into the trust by paperwork. Okay. You have the physical control of the car with the keys. So
Right. Okay.
if you go down, if you think about it, it's not something that somebody could do. And it's not something I would ever even think to do. But
Mhm.
even for somebody who would think to do it, it would be a lot of trouble to make it happen. And I've never encountered a situation in which that's actually been done.
Well, but isn't there another person in there that serves a certain role on the person who puts things in a trust? Is that
Yes,
something that's worth
yes,
discussing?
yes. Okay.
Okay.
The principles in a trust are the exchanger, that's you, the one who
Mhm.
starts off with the property. The creator, that is an independent party who signs the contract with you, creating the trust and appointing the first trustee. Then there is the trustee. I call it fiduciary owner because I don't
Mhm.
like using words that are used in statutory trust, but it's the same thing. The trustee, the fiduciary owner, manages the trust. The fourth principle is called the protector. The job of the fiduciary owner is to make sure the trust functions properly for your
Mhm.
benefit. The job of the protector is to ensure that the trust acts for your benefit. And if the trust does not act for your benefit, the protector can fire the fiduciary owner.
So if I have a trust, I assign somebody to be my protector,
Correct.
all under contract,
Correct.
agreements or whatever
The
paperwork,
yep,
and
that is
then
a
that
party.
person, then I
That
could
is
call that person up and say, "Hey, I want you to fire Brent Johnson as a trustee to this trust. I'm going to replace him with another trustee."
Yeah, the protector has that power to
Practically.
do. Whether or not you've asked the protector to do it, the protector has that power.
Right.
Absolutely. And so the protector should always be somebody you trust implicitly. Now, it cannot be a relative, okay, but it should be somebody you trust implicitly,
Mhm.
okay, because that person is there to ensure the trust or trusts act for your benefit. So
Mhm.
if you have a falling out with that person, you might want to change protectors at some point because you always want to know that that person is
Has your
looking
back.
out, has your back.
So,
Exactly.
and you can, and what I find interesting is that all these actions and moves can be made. Um, and the question would be, what if somebody just on their own unilaterally calls up and says, "Hey, you're fired," and uh, but I don't know he did that. All of every action and every single move has to be uh, led first with documentation,
That
paperwork,
that is correct.
notification, right?
That is correct.
Everything,
Also, if
everything.
I got a call or I got an email from a protector who said, "You're fired," my first question would be, has this gone through the beneficial interest holders? So I would contact the beneficial interest holder and say, I just got a message that says I'm being removed. I just want to know, is this what you would like? Because the protector is there to act for your interests. You know?
Okay.
And so I would ask a question there. However, if the protector said that went through the process, and there's a process, you have to do a trust minute, you have to have somebody new to appoint. There always has to be a fiduciary owner. There can never be no fiduciary owner. So if there is only one, and it's me, and the protector removes me, on the minute in which the protector says I'm being removed, there has to be somebody else being assigned who signs on to it. There has to be. Okay. Otherwise, I cannot just resign. Not unless there are multiple fiduciary owners.
And
There
again,
has to always be one.
all of this stuff you're teaching us has all been laid out by the founding fathers forward. It's all part of the way this country has operated from the day one until the criminals seized control in 1871. Am I right?
Yes, but even before then,
Oh yeah.
in Old England, they had pure trust. Plato is believed to have had one of these near 400 BC, though we don't have records that far back. But let me tell you one other thing. Since we were talking, I know we're running out of time, but since we were talking about the IRS, I just want to tell you how the income tax got started very briefly. There was a law called the Victory Tax in 1943 to 44. And it was a 5% tax on everybody. And it went to fighting Hitler. And so everybody was on board for it. In May of 1944, the victory tax was repealed. But the announcement of the repeal was not made. Instead, the newly created Internal Revenue Tax and Audit Service was instructed to have all corporations give the equivalent of a W-4 to all their workers, saying, we need you to sign this so you can be paid. So nobody thought twice about it. The initial income tax rate was 5%. The people were used to having 5% taken out, so there was no change in their pay. So everybody went along with it, signed on to it. But now, instead of the 5% going to fight Hitler, now the 5% were going to the privately held Internal Revenue Tax and Audit Service.
Yeah, privately held operation, domiciled, not even in the U.S. It's actually domiciled or was in Puerto Rico. I think it's been dismantled, and it's not even a U.S. entity. It's a foreign entity sucking the lifeblood out of your bank right to the Vatican Bank. It has always gone to the Vatican Bank.
And by the way, the parent company of the IRS is the Department of Treasury Corp, which is not the Treasury. And the parent company of the Department of Treasury Corp is, wait for it, the Federal Reserve.
Yep. And the Federal Reserve is not federal. It's owned by 12 private scumbag families who simply take a piece of paper and they write a number on it and says, this here is worth $2 trillion, politician, and you can use this to run government, and there's 8% interest on it. So take this worthless piece of paper and worthless ink. We say it's worth this much. What gives it value? My word. Here, $2 trillion. Yeah. Pay me taxes on it. We're going to get to taxes. Look at all these peasants out here breaking their back. Take it from them every time they get a paycheck. Okay, great. We got a deal. Now you got them, you got these entities, and you have the scumbag politicians all feeding off your soul.
I want to invite you all to get a copy of my book, The American Sovereign, How to Live Free from Government Regulation. I've written 3 books. That's the first of them. And it is a workbook for literally everything we've been discussing and so much more.
It's very comprehensive, comprehensive book.
And the stuff we've been talking about, where the definition of employee, the definition of trade or business, all that stuff, it's in the book. how to actually sever your social security number. It's in the book. All of it is in there. It's a tremendous book. My suggestion is go to my website, www.freedomradio.us, and there you'll be able to find out information about everything we do. I suggest you register as a member. It doesn't cost anything, but we do our best to keep the bad guys out, so we make everybody else just register, because the bad guys won't register because they admit when they register that they're not bad guys.
Well, yeah, folks, by the way, you can see right here on the screen there, Brent's address, their email, Brent Johnson at freedomradio.us. Folks will say, hey, okay, got your email. What's your website?
And let me say,
Hold on. That's a very important point. It's how things go over our head when they shouldn't. Like we're not taught to think critically and analyze anything. What's your website? Look at his email address. Whatever somebody's email address is it's highly likely, if it's not Gmail, whatever, something that's not the norm, freedomradio.us. Guess what his website is? freedomradio.us.
and I would appreciate if you can get the 888 number rather than the 541 number. The 888 number is much better. Folks, for you, it's 888 385 3733. 888-385 free. That's the main number.
Okay. I did have that up here. I should have sent that over. 888-385 free.
That's it.
FREE. Foxtrot Romeo Echo Echo.
That's it. There it is. You got it up there now.
Perfect. You got it right there. See it? 888-385-3733. You'll see all this down in the description box also if you missed this segment section. Anyways, thanks, Brent. You gave us extra time tonight. I think the people probably have a better grip on what these organizations are and how to accomplish that. I know over the last number of years since you and I became friends, worked together, that a number of people in the Patriot Street Fighter Nation has engaged you in getting, their assets in protected statuses and learning how to do what you do, and working with you on that. So thanks for taking good care always of my people. And thanks for being a person that had the balls to do the research years ago and then put yourself in their line of fire and call them out and stand your ground until they said, oh, shit. Let's just let this one go away because he's got it all. If we put him into court of law, we're going to get crushed because he's got it all. So it's knowledge. It's knowledge that gives you the power to defeat these criminals. It's the knowledge that gives you the power.
And next time we do a show together, I'll tell people the story of how I created an international incident because I refused to take the vaccine.
Well, I think some will remember it. I'm going to tell you. In fact, not only that, I want to put out an extra vote of thanks for the Patriot Street Fighter Nation, because this is the man, if you remember me, raising hell when the island, or the island nation of Tonga, where Brent lived, he was getting out because they were bringing down the weight of the kill shot and all the other insanity on him and his workers, and they wouldn't let him leave the country. And they refused unless he took the kill shot, wouldn't let him. Of course, he reached out to me from Tonga and said, okay, here's what we're going to do, all of us. We're going to beat the living shit out of the Tongan consulate in San Francisco. And then we're going after their consulate in the United Kingdom. And we are going to crush their phone lines. We're going to have their entire boiler room blow up. We're going to have so many people calling. And they did. And I came on here and I said, let me tell you something, you scumbags in Tonga. I am going to rain a shitstorm. I'm going to keep telling this country, do not go spend one tourism dollar in that country. Don't go there, because they survive on tourism. In America, you shut it off, they collapse. And we rained that shitstorm down for about a month. And what did they end up doing? They let you get out of the country.
Oh, yeah.
Why? Because we the people took action on an American patriot's defense. You did. I didn't do it. I just made the call. I made my calls too, but you guys came at them by the thousands, and it didn't take too long before they're like, holy shit, this is gaining momentum. If we lose our tourism dollars from the U.S., we're going bankrupt. We're going to be overthrown, and our people are probably going to shoot us anyways. So
Yep.
thanks for doing that. Congratulations. You showed one more time here in the Patriot Street Fighter platform. When we take action, shit happens. People change. Why? Because they're cowards. As I've been saying for 5 years, they're forking cowards. You just have to stand up to them with numbers. Numbers. We outnumber these bastards by the billions. We don't have to take their bullshit anymore. We outnumber them massively. They know it. They just don't want you to know it or believe it or have the balls to stand up and say, go fork yourself. Me and my 4,000 friends right here, we're not taking this bullshit anymore. They always back down.
Yes, they do.
Always.
Yes, sir.
Well, sir, thanks for coming in tonight. It was great to have you here.
It was a pleasure.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you for doing all the great work that you do out there. It's great to have you as a patriot brother in the battlefield. And so I will say thanks for my wonderful Patriot Street Fighter Nation here and all the folks that are live and those who are catching us on the recorded side. Thanks for all that you people do. I know you're out there fighting. When I talk about getting your ass off the couch and fighting, I'm not necessarily talking to Patriot Street Fighter Nation. You guys always are, but it's the ones who stumble across the channel and never thought about saying fork you to these guys. Yes, sir.
And
last word.
Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year. Let's have a blessed, independent, free 2026.
Absolutely. I think 2026 is going to be the year. We're going to make it that way. So I will say, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here tonight on The Tipping Point. And on behalf of myself and Tomahawk, who I'm going to go visit right now, I will say thanks for tonight and Happy New Year, Patriot Street Fighter out.